Thank you everyone for coming to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about Inline Manual, so thank you for taking your time to join us. I'm Heather McNamee. I'm on the customer success team at Inline Manual, and I just want to tell you a few housekeeping notes. This webinar will be recorded, and we're going to send you the recording afterwards. And if you ask any questions, we'll make sure to follow up if there's anything that I can't answer for you today. And you can always contact us on Twitter at Inline Manual if you have anything. So as I said, there's a chat window and you can ask questions as we go. So what can you do with Inline Manual? In this webinar, we're going to show you how to build engaging tours, tips, and tutorials, all step by step. And we'll show you how you can help users complete their tasks and answer their questions in context. And you'll be able to provide in-app help. So you've probably seen some of the walkthroughs that you're familiar with. We'll show you how to do that. And the great thing is you can actually segment this content and filter which users are seeing these messages. And then you'll know how things are performing. You can actually look at the analytics and see what's most effective. We're a self-funded and bootstrapped company, and we developed Inline Manual originally in 2012 to solve a common problem. So we were, as a web development agency, building software for our clients and wanting to hand it over smoothly, in a smooth transition. And we knew there had to be something better than creating PDFs and screenshots and screencasts. So that's why we came up with Inline Manual. First, we're going to look at some examples and case studies to show you how it works and how our customers are using it. This is the welcome screen at TeamGate. This is the start of their guided tour. This is the step one of a walkthrough. You can see in this walkthrough, they're showing people how to use the main sections of their application. And although, of course, any developer is working hard, product teams are working hard to make applications as intuitive as possible, there's still a lot of terminology that users have to get familiar with, especially in the B2B context. Perhaps in this case, things are relatively complex and they need to be explained. Here's another client of ours, Fresh Sales. You can see another welcome screen. Again, a totally different look and feel here, and a typical example showing the sort of seamless branding and design you can get with Inline Manual. Let me jump here to Sales Seek. Again, totally different look. They've embedded a video. And in this case, they have this orientation welcome screen for new users. And there's a common pattern where you can click through to get an overview, almost like a presentation. Sometimes they're called coach screens. And here's another example, this time by Freshdesk. So you've seen a lot of variation with the design and style, sort of focused on this one pattern, just so you could compare how people approach it. You can use the style editor in Inline Manual, or you can input your own CSS, and I'll give you a peek at how to do that. This is the next step, for example, in the Freshdesk case here. We can see they've embedded a video, and they've also offered a skip tour button. It's always nice to give people an out. But you're probably wondering, how do you manage this? If people skip something, they may want to get it later. I'm going to show you that you can actually use widgets. So here's another step in this tour. They've highlighted a section on the screen, again, giving some more information doesn't need more experienced users don't need, but experienced users need, so it doesn't clutter up the interface. And so we're wondering again, where are these, after you've skipped the tour, where is this content going? It's going into the widget, and here's Crunchboard. So if you draw your attention to the right here, you can see there's a widget here. This is by default in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, but you can customize it, put it and dock it anywhere you like, make it look any way that suits your design. And when you open up the widget, you'll see a list of topics. And so this keeps kind of an in-context tour for people. You can even make this list react to where you are in your application. So that list can be responsive and say, oh, if you're in this section of the application, users probably want this list of help. And so you can actually make it a little more interactive that way. It's really helpful. And you may have actually answered this one. I'm curious if the people who come onto the webinar, you're watching this today, did you click on this link? This was an invitation we sent directly to new users. And this is the type of thing, I think someone who registered was wondering, how did we do that? And I'll show you how we did that. And this is a widget. You can see when you've clicked on an article, in this case the release notes, it pops up on the pops up within the widget. So Again, everything's in context. You're not bringing people off to another location and possibly getting lost or annoyed. It just keeps them in context, which is really nice. So now you've seen this, you probably already have a good idea of what you're trying to achieve. Maybe you're trying to engage users and guide them on a specific journey to follow a specific goal. You may also be looking at supporting users. So maybe you have an application where you have users you need to onboard, and you're trying to pull that away from being done one-on-one, or maybe you want to augment that help as well. And so this is where the support aspect of Inline Manual is really good. So I'm going to show you a demo application, and we're going to look at sort of what it looks like in a little more detail. This is just a fake application, just nothing big here. But if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you can see our Inline Manual widget pops up, and we have two links here. One is this welcome tour, and it says, hello John. Okay, I'm not John, but this person's logged in as John here. And that is a token, so we're personalizing this message for that user. And we click next. And it's redirected us to another place, like another place on the application, and highlighting some information for us. In this case, it's highlighting it, and it's also locking it down so that I can't click and get lost. So there's a cover on this backdrop. And I can click next. And I've got multiple elements highlighted here. You can even see that doesn't look right. We have to fix that. We only want to highlight these elements. I'm going to show you how to do that. So after we click that, great, we're all set, and this is the last step. So in this walkthrough, what you've seen is that everything that you just saw there can be customized. Next thing we're going to look at is an article. Here's the release notes. And when I click on it, it shows up right in context. This is maybe something you want to have a new feature highlight or a knowledge-based topic. You can put it right here. They don't have to leave the site, go off to an help section. They can get it where they need it. So if I click this button, it should take me on a tour. And it's not taking me on a tour, so I'm going to fix that. That's what we're going to do in this presentation today. So what we're going to build is a welcome message, similar to as you've just seen already. It's going to take us on a step-by-step tour of this new feature that we've just announced in our release notes. And then it's going to show up as a topic in the widget. We're actually going to put it into that article. So we have that release note there. We're going to link it from that release note button that I showed you and tie everything together. Okay. Right. So I'm going to close the article and open up the authoring tool. So the authoring tool is actually let me just show you something. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Oh, this is important. I must show you this for a sec. Before you get started, you will have to install the authoring tool. It's actually a Chrome extension, and you probably brings up some questions. You're wondering, if you have this Chrome extension installed for authoring, what do users require to play it? And in fact, they can play it on any browser. It's just that you'll need Chrome and this Chrome extension to actually do the authoring. That's important for me to mention because I'm going to show you that right now. Right. So when as I just showed you, when I click on the link, it opens up in the browser. Handy enough. Nice thing is I can also dock it, and I can also minimize it if I need to. So what we're doing now is one of the things I wanted to fix, as you saw before, was that one of my steps, I've just moved the authoring tool to the left here, one of my steps, browse to the step here, had these elements selected, and I actually don't need all of them selected. So I'm bringing you into a deep dive to show you what a tour looks like, what a walkthrough looks like when it's already halfway completed. So you can get an idea of how it works. Then when we build one from scratch, it'll be a little more easier to understand. So here we are on a specific step. I can use the authoring tool to get a preview of where I am, sort of what I'm authoring. And I can also preview a step if I want to see how that looks. And I can also preview the whole topic, as you just seen before, with the authoring tool installed as well. So what we're going to do here is change the assigned element. What's happening in this case is that if we look at the step options, the tour will advance to the next step upon clicking the element that's assigned to this step. And you can actually, depends on what you want to do, but in terms of the elements, you can directly put in a selector, or I'm going to close this here. You can select the element here. And here we can see a very specific selector was chosen so that it will always get this same element. You can also use this expander tool and get a larger or a parent element. And the other thing you can do, okay, is edit it directly. So this is quite advanced if you're familiar with what your specific I suppose what your specific application is using. This is where you would actually change that. So this is basically the nuts and bolts of what you'll be doing when you're actually editing your walkthroughs. So I'm going to go back now and create a new one from scratch. Now that you've seen what it looks like, we're going to create that topic that we spoke about before. So I'll click to create a walkthrough. This is going to be the new feature tour. And create it. And the first step we're going to create is that welcome screen. And we use this step template here with a top image and text. And you saw before we had a greeting. And we use this option tokens. So I'll click on the tokens. And the tokens that will be available will actually depend on what information you're bringing in from your application. There we go. So it's already, since I'm logged in as John in this application, it's already replacing the name. And the way we're going to advance this step is by clicking the next button. So we'll add another step here, and I'm going to move the authoring tool to the side and highlight, or sorry, assign the element to something we want to show the users. For example, this. And say, now I could have it where they could click on the element so it would advance to the next step, or I can use this next button here as we used before and turn on the backdrop. So we're drawing the user's attention to what we're talking about and taking them on to the next step. So let's have them actually, on the last step, we will have them click on another element similar to the one we just had before. And we'll use the backdrop, again, draws the attention. And then we will make sure this is a click trigger. And for the final step, we'll say, well done. So we've just built a basic step-by-step tour. Let's preview the whole topic and see how it works. So here's your welcome screen. I'm going on a tour, say next, that's fabulous. And click this, and well done, we're finished. So things I might change about this is I will put in an explicit end link so they can definitely know that it's finished, they've completed it. Having made that step, we'll know in analytics that they've gotten to that step. This just gives them something to make it clear that they're finished. And the other thing I'd like to do is on this, this section here, I actually wanted to make sure they don't click on any of these elements. So I'm going to go back to the backdrop and turn on the cover, which is something I mentioned. So this is a way you can control the interactivity so they can't click and get lost or redirect somewhere else when you're just trying to tell them something about that. And there is our new feature tour. The thing we want to do, if I close the authoring tool briefly, is you can see the new feature tour is linked here, and we have this release notes. We want to link to it from this release notes link. And we also don't want it to show up here. So we're going to do two things to fix that. So first of all, open up the authoring tool and go back. You can see I'm working in my staging site, which is a site I created for this demo environment. And we'll go to the release notes. And I've added in a button. This is a button link you can add in just like this one here. And I'll double click on it, link to topic, and choose the new feature tour. Fantastic. There it is. So this will take a few minutes to refresh. And so, oops, make sure I've definitely saved that. Yep. It means that when I go here, I assume if I refresh this, oops, probably take a minute or two for that to cache. I did do a Command R or Control R to do a hard refresh, but sometimes things are just cached. Okay, let's take a quick step back and see what we've done so far. So let me just go ahead. So what we built today, we built a walkthrough which responded to user actions on buttons and triggers. So we used assigned elements to take click actions and they got to the next step. Then we configured the widget, which you saw lists all the content with actually, they just showed up there automatically. And then we linked to the walkthrough from an article. Okay, so let's take a step and see how we can improve that. I mentioned I wanted to hide that new feature tour from the topics list. So we're going to go into the site settings and add and arrange the topics right now. I'm just going to take a chance here and refresh this and see if on the release notes the link is working. There it is. It's working. Great. So the nice thing about this is that you can basically launch tours from anywhere. They will be listed in the widget by default though. So if I'm linking it from the release notes, it doesn't make sense that I want to put it there. So I'm going to go back into my site management. So if you've already logged into Inline Manual, you may already have created a site like this. I've got a production site, which is my live environment that's out there in the wild doing well. And we've got the staging environment, which is where we're playing right now. And you can bring down the topics you want to test on your staging environment. So you can think of your sites as sort of a holding place. You'll notice that I have another topic here called Example Tooltip, which is hidden. So it's not actually visible in the widget. So you can actually hide topics. And that's what I'm going to do right now is hide this topic. And once I've done that, it won't show up in the widget. The other thing we want to do, someone asked as part of the presentation, or when they registered, sorry, was about making these tours. How do you link them directly to users? You'll notice that there's a topic ID here. Quite small. And this topic ID, for example, the 23464, that topic ID is actually how you would link directly to a topic. So I'm going to show you that in the presentation here. So you would take your website, / at the end, question mark, I am topic, being careful to use a camel case here, equals, and then your topic ID. So that's all in the help section if you want to find out how to do that. You can also see that you can actually link right directly into a specific step, save people a few clicks. So you've seen a little bit of how to manage and arrange the topics. You can actually put, probably what you want to do is, rearrange them like this. That will affect how they appear in the widget. So I'll go back here and refresh and see if the changes have come out. There we go. So the welcome tour is here, the release notes, and not the new feature tour. Fabulous. Next thing we're going to do, go back to the settings, jumping around a lot here, hope they don't mind, and we're going to see how to change the look and feel. Now I did promise you that you'd see how to do this. There is this visual editor here. You can simply say I want to change how the buttons look, and it will allow you to change the colors. We also have the widget. You can position it. You saw one of our clients uses it in the right middle, for example. And you can also put in your own custom CSS. So that's how you would actually customize that. Another thing people often want to customize, makes a lot of sense, is in the widget, it says Inline Manual. And what you might like to do is actually change the language of that. And that's done as you do any of the localizations. So if you're adding translations, it's exactly the same. So we're going to add a localization, and this is going to be basically the English. And the widget is titled Inline Manual, but you can say need help. Something like that might work. As well, you can change the language. If you have the end button and you want it to say done or okay or finished, you can change that here as well. Just a little bit about how to manage your topics. Let me see, if I refresh here, it may take, again, probably a few minutes. We'll come back to that. So you've seen how to manage your sites really quickly. Next, we're going to look at optimization. There were a lot of questions about this as well, and you're probably wondering how you can actually use the analytics and improve and learn how your site's doing. First thing you have to do is actually enable analytics on your site if you haven't already, and then you'll configure people tracking. You'll notice it's a script, very similar to the script as it's more lines, I should say, but similar to installing Inline Manual as well. It's a script that goes into your application. So we're going to show you how to use segmentation to get the right messages to the right people. So you see that welcome message for that guy, John. And maybe I don't want that to go out to everybody, maybe just new users. And we'll auto launch that content. So back to my site in here. I'm just going to take a chance and see if it's refreshed, if it's available. Oh, there it is, need help. So I've changed the title of my widget there. And next we're going to do is look at the analytics, okay, and automation. Now, as soon as you actually enable analytics for the first time, you will already have a segment called new users and one called everyone but new users. So we can actually just peek at that segment and show you the variety of rules that you can have. So you can combine these rules. Here is created within a relative date or time. There's lots of things you can do. You could segment, for example, based on how many things they've played or their group, such as, what company they're in or their roles. Maybe you only want to show this to people who have access to a specific section based on their role or their plan, for example. And so that's really what this is. A segmentation is a way for you to personalize the content. Once we have the segments created, we can automate these messages. So we're going to create a new auto launcher to share that welcome screen. We're going to select a topic, welcome tour, and the segment will be new users. And once I save that, it will work. Basically, next time that a new user logs in, they're going to get the welcome tour. It will pop up right into their browser just like this. And other users won't see it unless they click on it in the widget. So you're probably wondering, if you just want to hide that particular tour, you know how to do that now. You edit that in, or you manage that in your topics list of your site. So hopefully that's given you an idea of what you can do with auto launching. It's a really important feature, I think, to get started with right in the beginning. You want to monitor your progress with analytics as well. I'm going to give you a peek at what it looks like when we have some more data. Here you can see that we had a 7-step tutorial, and seems like users are making it through step 5 okay, and then they're dropping off. So we could actually look at this and think, well, are we giving people a less than satisfactory experience? Maybe we need to cut out those last 2 steps, or maybe the step 5 is really where people finish off, and we're going to give them a nice finish at the end, say, hey, you did that. You've done that, good job. So I think this is sort of where the drop-off funnels are really useful. As well, you get a lot of information. Depends on how you connect your application, and that's the data that you'll be able to look at in people tracking. And it's pretty surprising. You can see good detail about the users and what they've actually been using. So can you build it? Let's look, I suppose from your perspective, what you're trying to do right now. What do you want to do? As you've seen so far, there's no coding required, but you can actually extend this. Developers can extend and do different things with Inline Manual. And you can update it quickly with the authoring tool. And you've seen the auto launcher. I'm curious if I've answered all of your questions and if you have any. So now is the time, if you haven't already, to put your questions in the Q&A. As we were going and preparing for this, you registered as well, and you asked some questions ahead of time. And this is what you asked. First was, I'm interested to learn about your application stuff and things, and I hope we got a good introduction for you. And you were also asking basic things about segmentation. They didn't show you tooltips. It's a good reminder. I'll go back and show you how to do a tooltip. Next, you want to know about the pop-ups, and that's exactly what I showed you, that the one that you responded to the webinar, very similar to the one we did there. And the difference is that in that button, instead of linking to a topic, you can just link to a website or put anything you want or any content you want in there. And finally, how to configure Inline Manual for developers. We looked actually at people tracking, and you can see that's where it really starts. You're connecting your application to Inline Manual. And finally, how to link to users directly to tutorials, which we did cover. So, looks like we missed looking at the tooltips, which I'll show you right now. So we sort of skimmed over quite quickly the options when we go to create a topic. One of them is walkthrough, tooltips, articles, and redirect. So a tooltip is useful, especially if you want to add additional information to your site without cluttering it up with more stuff. And that's what I'm going to do right now is make a tooltip. And what we'll do is create a step. So it looks very similar to a walkthrough, except there, oops, sorry, maybe I made a mistake. Yeah, I created a walkthrough instead of a tooltip. I bet some clever people watching me caught that, so. Really have a sample tooltip. All right, this is what it should look like. There's not a lot of step options. It's just a very simple environment for you to edit in. So here we have the popover appearing, and we'll assign the launcher to where you want the small question mark to show up. So say you may want a tooltip here. And the tooltip will basically appear by default to the top right. You can also move it to the left, for example. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit to look at the launcher, and you can move things if you wanted to slightly, depending on how you want to position it. You can do it this way. You can also, of course, use CSS to position these things as well. An important thing would be to also set the context path. So maybe you only want this tooltip about tables to show up on the context path tables. You don't want that to show up every time there's a header on a page. Context path is also important just by keeping things easier. So we've dealt with the launcher now. We're going to talk about the step. We're going to assign where the step should go. Okay, and we'll have it be here. So once they click here, the step will pop up. The other thing we want to talk about a little bit is visibility. And visibility is important because if you, it depends on how you want to share these. Bear with me a second, sorry. We have the launcher will either never be visible. That means you would only maybe launch it from the widget. Always be visible, meaning it will always be visible when someone's loaded up onto that page, or only when it's active, or only when it's inactive. So I'm going to set it to always be visible, and what'll happen is we preview the topic. Oops. When we click on this, the popover will come up. So in a tooltip as well, you could have, for example, in the widget that the tooltips are only visible when it's active, and these launchers will only appear when they choose to get extra help. So they don't even need to be that visible. After this webinar today, I'll send you a link. We have a good blog post and some resources as well about using tooltips. And I think as well, if I double check here on my list of topics, I had an example tooltip, and I can make that visible. I'll show you how that looks as well. Any other questions you have? Sounds good. All right, well, thank you all very much for coming today. I hope to see you. Next thing I think you should do, I suppose, is install the authoring tool if you haven't already and start to create your content. You don't need to do anything on your own site, just get started with authoring content. And of course, contact us, support@inlinemanual.com if you have any problems.